Okay. Yeah, I think that's good. All right, now we're recording. So, for anybody who would be wanting to listen, my name's Ben Mayer. I'm speaking with my good buddy Mitch Gilliland.
Mitchel Gilliland.
Yeah, and it is Tuesday, October 3rd, right? 4th, 2022. Anyway, good to see you, man. Haven't been face to face. We had this whole pandemic thing that we were going through.
Right, yeah.
Last 2 years, it seems like we've only got to hang out several times, and then had to wear masks doing that. You know, and crazy world that we're in now. But
It's been at least 4 months since we've sat with each other.
right, yeah, it has been. Yeah. How have you been?
Been good. Health is good. Like you say, the pandemic made things much difficult with everybody. I mean, this country was damn near destroyed by that COVID-19 was the pandemic. But we seem to have gotten over it, and everybody is acting more normal. For a while there, you did not want to go outside.
Yeah. Do you remember seeing people driving around in their car by themselves wearing masks? It was the craziest, like.
I still see that today.
Today, yes, 2 years later.
I still wear a mask when I go in.
Yeah.
They don't require it anymore. The doctor's offices do, and if you don't have one, they give you one. But I really think we're past that.
Yeah.
Nobody is distancing anymore, and very few places, mostly medical, require you to wear a mask.
Yeah. Yeah. It must have been tough being isolated. Everybody was isolated, but without having family living directly. Well, Daniel was with you some, right?
Yeah, he was, my son Daniel was living with me for about a year and a half, but that was not during the pandemic.
Right.
He had already moved out.
That's right.
He had moved out before I fell.
Yeah.
And everybody came to visit, you know, like you did.
Mm-hmm.
And Captain Booth came, Joe, Don, Jay, Rogers.
And this was in the hospital?
That was in the rehab center.
The rehab center.
Yeah.
So we were just talking right before we hit record about what had happened, and if you would like to tell it again, we were just so that we were keeping everybody up to speed. But 3 years ago, there was an incident that kind of changed your life.
It did, Ben. What happened was my apartment had, out of the entrance, it had a set of stairs, 14 stairs, that I had to get into the living space. And I'm type 1 diabetic, and I had a low blood sugar episode and fell down every one of those stairs. Broke my left ribs, had a concussion, broke my thumb and broke my toe, and was unconscious for 14 hours. And I finally woke up and went back to my bedroom and went to sleep. My daughter, Katie, kept trying to call me, and I was not answering the phone. So she came over, got a key from the management, and came in and found me. She's in the medical profession herself, and she said, "Dad, you need to go to the hospital." And I said, "Nah, I'm fine." And then my wife, who we were no longer together, she came by and basically physically pulled me out of the bed and said, "We're going to the hospital."
Bloody and bruised and.
Yeah, I was in the intensive care unit for 10 days.
And they didn't know, like, if I'm trying to remember correctly, because I was hearing from multiple sources too. We worked together at the time, back in, was it 2018?
Yeah, 17.
17. So we worked together, and we didn't know what had happened. And I'm sure they were trying to figure it out. Did he get beat up? I don't know if there was a sign of, like, obviously there's probably blood all the way down the stairs. They're like, what in the world, happened? Did somebody rough him up at the Satellite bar across the street and mug him? And, he made it back there. But because I don't know if you were responsive. You were still low, and like you had all the broken bones.
Yeah.
I think you broke. Didn't you break part of your face too, or?
My left cheekbone.
Yeah.
Was cracked.
So it looked like somebody beat you with a bat.
That's what Don thought. I took a photo. Well, he came by. I forgot that. And my former wife, my daughter, and Don Wiggins, who Ben knows, we all play guitar together, and Don came by and he said, "Did somebody jump you?" He said, "It looks like somebody beat the out of you."
Mm-hmm.
And he also said, "You got to go to the hospital." And I told him, "I'm fine, buddy, I'm fine." And Ann finally took me to the hospital, and at that point I was not low anymore.
Right.
I was just so injured.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I was in an intensive care unit for 10 days.
Yeah, I came to see it at that time also. Yeah.
They didn't know if I was going to make it.
Yeah.
They told my parents, "We're doing what we can, but we do not know if he's going to live."
Yeah.
I personally never thought that I was that sick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was hurting from the broken bones, but not for a second did I think my life was in danger.
Right.
But it was. They didn't know if I was going to make it.
Yeah.
Which, of course, my parents, you're a parent, they didn't want to hear that.
No. And you're ready to just get out of the hospital.
I was
And they're
ready
like,
to
"Hey,
run.
Mitch,
Yeah, I was
go."
ready to get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
But I was there 4 months.
Yeah. And you proceeded, Katie, packed up all your belongings for you while you were, and that you haven't seen that apartment since that time, have you? You've never been back to it?
Not inside, no.
Yeah.
I still occasionally, and you sometimes meet me there, I still go to the satellite because I know all the people that work there and they've become friends. So I go and see them. It's the best bar in Wilmington. There's nothing that comes close. But I've not been inside the apartment. I drive by it going to the satellite. The satellite is right across from where I was living.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it changing my life. When I got out of the hospital, I changed my whole lifestyle. I quit drinking beer. I will drink wine, but I quit drinking beer. I've focused on my diabetes. I've had it for 50 years. I'm 63. I got it when I was 13. So I've had it my whole life. And I never, I took it seriously because when you have a low blood sugar episode, you have to. You get to the point where you lose, if you don't eat something, take sugar, you get to the point where you lose muscle control and you cannot do anything. So when I got better, I changed my lifestyle and focused on diabetes. I rarely get low anymore. I do, but it's rare. I walk 2 miles a day. I've done that for 4 years now, and
but you look good. I was gonna mention that. You look real healthy.
Well, it changed me.
Yeah.
It changed my way of living, and even though I occasionally go low, it's nothing like what happened when I fell down those stairs. Mm-hmm. Nothing like that has ever happened again because I'm so focused, and so the low blood sugars are so rare. When you start to go low, you feel it, and drink orange juice, eat a sandwich.
Meet some homeless guys with a 2 liter of Pepsi and.
Right, yeah. Ben was with me when I went low one time, and we were walking around Greenfield Lake, and Ben recognized I was going low, and there was some homeless guy that had a Pepsi.
Pushing a shopping cart. There's 2 of them, and Whitney runs right up to him and says, give me that. So not like, she said, my friend's diabetic, give me that. And so she like kind of does the opposite of like the panhandlers and steals from one that normally is kind of asking for things. And she just goes right there and asks for something politely, kind of, but in an emergency. And I told Mitch, I said, well, we got your blood sugar up, but you might need an HIV test now. I don't know.
Yeah.
That wasn't the smartest decision to just random stranger. Anyway, a couple were probably together. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah. God was with us that day. Yeah.
But he was fine. And I had some beers too, so we were on the way back to your apartment. I think was it Shovels and Rope, the band that we were going to see?
Yeah.
Somebody, one of the Penguin artists. But yeah, that was a crazy time. You were speaking of, you found out when you were diabetic when you were 13. And I was kind of going to ask you about what it was like growing up in Wilmington at that age. But if you could, since we were talking about the diabetics, how did you just, you said discover, like how does one discover? Were you going low at that age or?
No. It was the opposite because my pancreas quit working, and which in your body controls your metabolism. It has a big part in it. Mine failed, so my blood sugar went way, way up. And it was like that for 4 days, and I could not get out of bed. And my mom took me to the hospital, and the doctor came back into the room and said, "Ma'am, your son is type 1 diabetic." And they fixed me right up. But from that point, I had to take insulin, and for the rest of my life. There's no cure for type 1 diabetes.
So you this would have been what, 1971-ish or something?
72, yeah. So
somewhere around, yeah.
It was the summer of 1972.
Wow. It's wild. And so ever since then, I mean, I guess I don't know the history of it, but they've had an understanding of what diabetes was. But do you know how long that they had insulin around in that form to?
I think it seems like they developed insulin for a user in the 50s.
Okay. And they've been working on it all the way up till now. You've got
all the way, yeah.
Monitor a couple years ago.
They up in Canada, they do a surgery where they embed into the pancreas. It's something the Canadians actually created. They embed something into your pancreas that makes it work again.
Oh, wow, that's wild.
It's I don't know that much about it, but they developed it, and you no longer have to take insulin. It's somehow making the pancreas secrete insulin.
Wow, yeah, that's fascinating. So just in your lifetime, like it's
Yeah.
gone from
Yeah, that's only been 15, 20 years ago.
yeah.
And they, over in England, they have a procedure that you do not have to take insulin.
Right.
But I've lived with it so long, it's, it's like, I'm not going to spend that money.
Right. Yeah.
And especially in the last few years since I've taken much better control.
And watching what you're eating and consuming.
Yeah.
All together. So.
Yeah.
I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee. Would you like me to pour you one?
Yeah, I'll have to spit this tobacco
Oh,
out.
I mean, you don't have to. It's pretty hot. I'm gonna stay hot for a while. I don't have any Splenda. We can't do sugar, but
Well, that's all right. I like it black. Let me
you
just
want to hit a pause?
yeah. Let me just step out.
Well, we're ready, and we're back. We're back recording. Yep. So, yeah, we were right before we just left. We were talking about being 13, having diabetes, and knowing that. And I wanted to ask you, at that time, where were you living?
I was in I need to think about that. I was in Shelby, North Carolina. Yeah.
So you were born in Wilmington,
Yes.
and you said it was 1960.
We left went to outside of Winston-Salem when I was 7 years old, and so what would that have been? 1970, and we were there for a year and then moved to Shelby.
Okay. So from Wilmington, born, and at 7 years old, moved to. Did I mess that up? No.
Winston-Salem.
Winston-Salem.
And we were only there about a year.
Okay.
And went to Shelby.
Gotcha. And that was you and your brother
And sister.
and sister and parents.
My sister was a baby. My brother was 2, and I was 7.
Okay. Okay. So you lived in Shelby for a while, but then didn't you guys move back to Wilmington at some point also?
Never moved back. The family
Okay.
didn't. We stayed in Shelby a good long time. When we left Shelby, we moved to Asheboro, which is like 6 miles from the geographic center of the state.
Oh yeah.
And after I finished college, I went to App State from Asheboro, and I moved back after finishing school and went to work at the North Carolina Zoological Park, which is located in Asheboro.
Mm-hmm. What were you doing there?
I started out on the design staff, building artificial rock, which they encircled the exhibits with. Big ones. You know, these things were like what you see in the mountains.
Right, but it wasn't. It just was. I mean, it was all concrete.
All concrete.
Yeah.
And as it was setting up, you took a point trowel and carved it to make it look like rock.
So it's almost like it's an art form.
It is. All the guys on the design staff were artists. They had gone to art school, had MFAs in art, and they were very good. I became friends with all of them, and years later, one of them who became one of my best friends, he started his own business building artificial rock, and I went to work with him. And we traveled the country doing it, from New York to California. I'm going to see him next month anyway. He moved to Marion, South Carolina, which is only like 2.5 miles from, 2.5 hours from here. But I did that with him for 7 years.
Weren't you telling me a story once that, was this the same guy that you were working out of Charleston, speaking of South Carolina?
That's right, that was him.
Came while you were on the middle of a project.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hugo. We stayed, one of my friends from Asheboro, who also works at the zoo, he and his brother were working for us, with us.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say for, because it wasn't my business. And he had fallen off a sawhorse. He was doing something he shouldn't have been doing, but we were on our way to get something to eat, and he saw something over his head that he just hopped up on the sawbuck and reached up, and he lost his balance and broke his knee into like 13 pieces.
God almighty.
And we got an ambulance, and so when Hugo hit, he was in the hospital.
Right. And that was like a category 4.
4, yeah.
Huge hurricane.
Yeah. One of the worst, yeah. This one that we had, Ian, that we just had.
Yeah.
They say it's in the top 5.
Wow. I think Hugo was South Carolina's worst in history.
Yeah.
For that state.
It was.
What was that like to ride it out there? I mean.
Tim was in the hospital with a busted up knee. His brother and I were in the apartment, and about 30 minutes after it hit, dead center. I mean, the eye went over us, but right over the top of us. And I went outside and looked at it. But 30 minutes after it hit, I did not want to be there. I said this was a mistake. Mm. And the next day, we watched the wall bow in from the force of the wind.
In the house?
In the apartment, yeah. The exterior wall where the windows were.
You're like downtown Charleston?
No, we were close to the job site.
Okay.
And the boss would always, my friend Sam, he would always get us an apartment that he stayed in also. And we were there in that apartment when Hugo hit. When that wall started bowing in, I mean, you could see it. It was almost like a bubble. He and my friend's brother and I, there was a big couch behind. We were actually sitting in it, and when we saw that wall start to bow, we jumped and went and knelt down behind the couch because we had the windows taped up, and they say you're not supposed to do that.
I just heard that recently too.
Yeah.
Don't tape them because it's the large chunks of glass, like shrapnel, will now be, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we got behind the couch in case the windows went out and we didn't get decapitated.
Right. That's wild. So
yeah, and the next morning, our apartment was fine, but every other, and there were hundreds, every other of the apartment buildings were nothing but stick.
It's like a giant tornado came right over top of you.
Yeah.
And you're living in that. When it was coming, I guess the first part, the eye comes over, and that's the middle. Were you able to go outside and kind of like, oh wow, this is over?
Yeah. I went out the second half of the storm. When the eye came over, everything stops. No wind.
No rain.
Nothing. It's the eye is. You could see the stars.
So oh wow, so this is a nighttime hurricane.
Nighttime.
It's terrifying. So you're just like. It just feels like the night just keeps going on, and then it's dead quiet. Like you can see the stars. Like were birds out and confused? Or?
Didn't see any birds.
I don't know if they would be like.
It was 140 mile an hour storm, and birds can't fly in that. But we went out when the eye came over, and then the second half of the storm is the worst part. I went out briefly during that just to see what it would be like to stand in a major hurricane.
Wow.
And I went out for like 10 seconds and went back inside. But I had to grab the railing to keep from being blown away.
No way. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's 140 miles. It's a tornado, right? Basically, it's your freight trains coming at you.
Well, a tornado will spin over 200 miles an hour.
Okay. Yeah, but they're not categories the same way. They have a force or a 10 scale or something.
Right. Yeah. I think it's 1 to 10. Yeah, like you're saying.
And 10 would be the biggest,
worst.
Right?
Yeah.
So 5 is the worst, and you went through a category 4 hurricane.
5 is worse. Is the highest for hurricanes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing pictures of Hugo, and it was just all of the trees were sheared, like you said, buildings completely gone. I couldn't imagine being in one of those and walking out next door, and it looked like a nuclear explosion went off, and it's just left rubble and a few sticks standing up, and all the trees are completely just sheared off. That was a wind shear. It wasn't, a rain event where a lot of times trees will fall over after the ground's been saturated for a day or two, and then small gusts can blow pine trees off, but it looked like the whole forest of pine trees had all been snapped.
Yeah. And hurricanes also will spawn tornadoes. Right. So some of that, I've never seen anything like it. It was, you couldn't think.
Yeah.
You didn't know if you were going to survive. So we got lucky, but all those other buildings right surrounding us, not surrounding, but that complex, were completely destroyed.
Yeah. I wonder, had you've always, since I've known you, talked about your fascination with weather and had even expressed maybe becoming a meteorologist. Do you think that was the moment that inspired you, or had you already been really into what, like you're well aware that this hurricane was going to be bad and,
Yeah, I had found myself interested in weather at an early age, even before from about 10. Mm-hmm. And I did consider going in that field, but that was later. I had already started working. I liked what I was doing. I wasn't going to quit what I was doing to be a meteorologist.
Right.
I just wasn't going to do that. But I'd always, since a young boy, been interested in weather, and to this day I still am, and I watch weather and I'm especially hurricanes because we live on the coast, and you and I both have been through many, and that's something that you keep an eye on, because it kills people. And I, to this day, watch and am fascinated by weather.
Yeah, well, even though you never were a professional, meteorologist, something that you got to use as an interest and a hobby while we were working together, especially offshore, which is, a dangerous environment. You were responsible, I remember, for giving weather reports to the captain.
Right,
So kind of got to combine that interest of, he wanted to know what was, be abreast of what was going on, and
right,
you were glad to be able to keep up with it, and it wasn't like it was a chore.
It was a part of my job.
Yeah.
It's actually in the job description.
As the technician on a research vessel.
Yes, yeah.
We were, you'd probably be better at describing what we were doing out there. I was a former student when I first met you. That's been over 13, 14 years ago now, but years later became a fellow crew member and dear friend, and we have been logged a lot of days on the ocean, a lot of sea miles together. I think we worked together almost 4 years, and during that time, we had to be aware. We were crossing the Gulf Stream a lot of times, at least twice a year to go to the Bahamas.
Right, yeah.
And that's no joke, and that's one of those things that feeds these major hurricane systems.
Right,
that
yeah.
warm water.
That warm water.
And and you crossed that dozens and dozens of dozens, because you worked at Cape Fear alone, right, for almost 20 years.
I was there 22 years.
22 years.
Yeah.
Wow. And a technician on an ocean-going research vessel for that entire time. It started out on the Dan Moore. That was, I believe that boat was 1965. It was built.
Built in actually 64.
64.
Yeah.
Keel was laid on that. So that was an 85-foot former Division of Marine Fisheries vessel. 85-foot, right? And,
87.
87, and converted into a research vessel and then purchased by the college.
Yes.
And if you would have started there early 2000s, working there, 2000.
I think it was. You're right. I think it was 2000. Well, I think I was on the Pelican in Louisiana in '98. I think I started on the Dan Moore in 1999.
99, yeah. Yeah, and that was, man, the world was a different place. That was before September 11th, 2001. And
Yep.
safety just seemed like, I don't know, it just seemed like a different time. For anybody that would be listening, now with all the rules and regulations and safety, I mean, it was, everything was done safe in its own way, but it was just a little bit different. In fact, they said no cowboys. We don't need any cowboys out there. And funny enough, when I met Mitch, he had a cowboy hard hat. And he and his many checkered past of multiple hats he's had to wear doing different careers and jobs. He used to work with cattle, and I learned that as we got to know each other more as a student. And remember seeing that. Never forget that white hard hat, cowboy hat, and it was the damnedest thing. We're out there, in a dangerous rocking and rolling environment, and we had cowboys out there, you know, and there's not a lot of that now. Everything's super safety. It's over safety, you know, at some point where, you know.
I still have that hat.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Well, you bring it out every once in a while.
It's in my bedroom.
Yeah.
When I left, you know, we had that get together
That's right.
over at the satellite, and everybody in the program, the instructors, the crew, signed it and gave it to me as a gift, and I have it in my. I look at it every day because I don't close my closet doors.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big closet, and it's up on the shelf, and I see it every day.
Yeah.
And sometimes I put it on.
Yeah. Nice.
I did. I was a cow. I didn't call myself a cowboy, but that's what I was, working cattle. And we used to do it from horseback, and
awesome.
obviously trucks. I even was in 2 rodeos as a bull rider.
No way.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I
How many do they judge it by seconds? Is that like how long you can
eight,
stay?
eight, 8 seconds
8 seconds.
is a full ride.
And then you get points for style, like also
Yes.
on top of that.
Right, yeah.
Do you remember how many seconds you got?
I got 4.
Okay. What's scarier, getting on a bull or looking at Hurricane Hugo coming down at you?
Getting on a bull.
Both are pretty terrifying. I mean,
Well, the bull I rode, it was 2 different ones, but the first bull I rode had like 5 minutes prior to me getting on him in the chute,
mm-hmm.
had plowed through a guy and then put his head right in the middle of the guy's back.
God,
and plowed with him like 10 feet.
And he had horns, like.
They do have horns. This one had short.
Okay.
They were probably 4 inches
mm-hmm.
long. So the guy he plowed the ground with was not. He didn't have horns in his back.
Okay.
The bull put his face in his
Right.
back, forehead, and
But you had just seen this particular
I just
bull.
seen.
You know he's capable of this, and you're like, I'm going to get on this bull.
And there was, yeah. So I mean, that had happened 5 minutes earlier, and there was no fear whatsoever. My feeling was when I sat on the bull and put my hand in the leather that they tighten on your palm, and then you grab it so you're making a fist. My notion was how powerful this animal was. And I was not scared at all. But this is a massive animal, and they're brought up, trained to buck and spin. You know, they're trained to do that.
So it's opposite of a horse, where you try to break a horse from doing that. They're actually rearing these cattle, these bulls, to be more aggressive.
Right.
And not want somebody on their back, to purposely throw them off.
Right. Yeah.
So you've been used to riding horses that were kind of calm and domestic, and you know, not always. I'm sure they have their own personalities.
They do. Yeah.
And you go from that to jumping on this almost feral wild animal with no saddle, right? They don't have saddles on bulls.
No.
Bareback.
Bareback. Yeah.
Yeah. So you did that 2 times.
Twice.
Two different animals.
Right. Yeah. And the second one was pretty much the same. And I think, I don't remember, it's been so long ago, I think I did right at 4 seconds on that one too.
Right. That's wild. Sorry, that dog keeps barking. Would you like me to warm up you a little coffee here?
I'm good.
Hang on, I'm going to press pause real quick. Okie dokie, now we're back on. I think we got the dogs kind of settled down for a moment. So just had a couple more little questions. I didn't know, I'm a new father now. I got a 16-month-old daughter, Magnolia, and you have 2.
2, yeah.
Daniel and Katie. What advice do you have for me as a new father, married with a 16-month-old, that you think maybe Daniel and Katie possibly one day could, if they were to have their own children, what do you think that they could gain from your perspective of being a dad, and specifically, you know, of a young baby, how tough it can be? I know you said that Katie was had, you know, colic as an infant, and you know, restless nights. Just what it's like to be a mother or a father, from your perspective, and you know, how rewarding that can be.
It's incredibly rewarding. The couple of things that first and foremost is safety. You cannot take, unless they're asleep, you cannot take your eyes off of them, because at a certain point, not Maggie at this point, but she's crawling, isn't she?
Well, she's walking, she's running around.
Yeah,
she's running around.
So at this point, they'll hurt themselves by grabbing things and not knowing what they're grabbing or doing. And for that reason, you can't take your eyes off of them, because you got something, hot water on the stove heating up.
Mm-hmm.
They can reach that.
Do you have any incidences with your two that you specifically are like, oh man, that time was kind of scary? Like,
not like that. We plugged all the outlets
mm-hmm.
because they will go for those,
Mm-hmm.
and you can get not electrocuted, but it'll hurt because you can touch those, stick your fingers in the slot far enough to make a connection.
My mom told me I'd stuck a bobby pin in one at a house trailer at Atlantic Beach that we used to have. And she said, you only did it once. And I guess that's all it takes. But,
right, yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice. We've got most of ours plugged that don't have a lamp plugged into it now. But,
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Just things like that. As you've done, as we did, you take as much of that out of the way, or somewhere they can't reach it. And that seems to work, and you must watch them.
Mm-hmm.
It's key.
Yeah.
You cannot, and I'm not saying stare all day long until they go to sleep, but you have to focus.
Keep a presence, like be present with them. In today's world, with these cell phones that everybody seems to be glued to, your attention and focus can easily be distracted from not staring at your baby, but just being with them. And yeah, I try not to look at mine when I'm around her, try to be aware of that personally, but you can still, get sucked in, Facebook and Instagram, all the
right, yeah.
apps and gadgets that seem to just steal our focus that you didn't have to deal with growing up. Probably not when they were born either.
No.
Cell phones were around.
Not until they were older.
Yeah.
But the other thing for good parents, it's automatic. Love them. Give your love to them. Now that seems simplistic, but it involves everything. If you're outside in a crowd, then you have your hand in theirs. This happened with Katie one time. We were at a gathering up in the mountains, and there was a young boy about Katie's age, and they were 3 or 4.
Mm.
And Katie went and sat by me next to this little boy, and he reached over and grabbed her forearm with both of his hands and started twisting.
Wow.
Like an Indian bride.
Yeah, that's what it was called. Yeah.
And she started crying, actually hollering, and I did not hesitate. I reached over and grabbed his hands and crushed them and pulled his fingers off, and he was crying at this point.
Right.
But I didn't hesitate. That's my daughter.
Right.
Nobody is going to do that to my daughter.
Yeah.
And Ann, she was cussing the mother. Mother was cussing me.
Right. And Katie's crying.
And Katie and the boy are crying.
Yeah, everybody's crying.
Yeah, except for me.
Yeah.
Ann got pissed.
Well, as your mother and a father's love is a powerful force.
A good mother's love is the most powerful force in the universe. And next to God's love, there's nothing stronger than a good mother's love for her child.
Well, I agree. What if I have another question? What's your most favorite part of being a father?
Watching them learn.
Okay.
It for example, a big one is when they start to walk.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much pride in that, and that goes on as long as you're alive. So when they get their license, when you take them and let them drive to practice, even though they don't even have a learner's permit, there's a joy in watching them learn how to do things. Graduation. These things fill you with so much pride. Marriage. It's what most people consider the big things in your life, and the learning by theirself or you teaching. It's just joyful.
Yeah. Is there anything, speaking of learning and all of your experience and history very knowledgeable. Anytime I've had problems from irrigation or electrical, I usually come to you, and you're pretty knowledgeable. Is there anything that you wish you would have taught Daniel or Katie, or maybe, that you would recommend for me to teach Maggie? And you say, if I could go back, I wish they would have, started that sooner, or, it could be like guitar. That's something I'm interested in, teaching Maggie, or, from your perspective, is there anything that you're like, Ben, you should focus on teaching Maggie X?
Honestly, Ben, I'd have to think about that some, because Ann and I have been good parents, and we've pretty much so far. Katie's 33, Daniel's 25. We've done everything that we've wanted them to learn. We've done it.
All right.
And there may be things to come up that we would want to teach. As a Maggie being a young child, teach her to I don't know how to put it. Teach her to like school.
Okay.
Education is very valuable. And I suspect Maggie is going to be intelligent because she's got your and Whitney's genes.
Hopefully more of her mom's, but yeah.
But education, yes. And there's got to be a better way to say it than teach her to like school.
Well, learn to love, learn to, that's great advice, is, just keep an open mind and, to look forward to new experiences and to embrace what those experiences will teach you, because everything and everybody has a story, and there's something to gain, a perspective, an opening of your own, mind and heart in a way that there's always something else to learn. The moment where you think you know everything, I think that's the biggest moment of a fool has ever existed. It's like, to have anybody, that's why I love asking people that have lived and had more experience than me, what their perspective is, especially something I'm interested in, which is raising a daughter and trying to do as good of what you seem to have modeled. For me, it's like, oh, okay, that's something that I would want to have, successful children. And it's not just enough to have a kid. You have to, like we've said, and I've written down, you have to love her and be patient and present with her and inspire her to like education and to keep learning. And yeah, I've written those down, and just to reiterate and say that again as something that I want to keep with me. And that also helps, even though you could say, oh, that's a lot of normal stuff, but it's things you need to hear and remind yourself, because you can get in the weeds of having a career and family and like having those focus points, almost like a mantra to remind yourself, hey, and be gentle on yourself too, because it's life. You could, I'm not saying, oh, you made a mistake doing this, or you should have done this as a dad. Just that was the question I was asking, is if there was anything that you would recommend to a younger you or me, yourself. I haven't gone through it, and I think you've answered that great. Just teach them early to learn to love and not resist school, and say, hey, even though I might not like this, there's something down in there to gain, and it's a building block to the next level.
And one thing we have not talked about, and this is relating to that, to your question, a belief in a higher power. Now, I'm Catholic. I wasn't raised that, but Ann and Katie and Daniel, all three, wanted me to convert. And with the Catholic faith, that process takes 2 years. I was raised as a Presbyterian, Protestant. But for my family, I decided that I would do it because it would make them happy. And it doesn't have to be Christian.
Okay.
There's a lot of religions out there that have, I've read some of the other religions' holy books. Ours is the Bible. And Ben, you'd be surprised at how many of those other religion holy books are similar to the Christian Bible. They're amazingly similar. So it would not, the reason I say that is, let your daughter decide. Teach your faith, but let her decide.
Okay. Well, man, I do appreciate it. I think probably go ahead and wrap this up. But thanks for coming over today. We've had a good little conversation.
Yeah,
we're all out of breath wrestling the dog that kept barking. Sorry about that.
Well, it's been great, and I appreciate your questions, and I enjoyed talking with you. And as we've said, we'll decide in the future if there's more we want to discuss.
Yeah, and if not, maybe we can lay down a couple songs on guitar, bring a mandolin or banjo out too, and just mess around. It's been too long.
Yeah, that'd be good.
At the very least, we got to hang out and see each other more. I know life gets busy, but the pandemic's over, so we don't have to isolate so much.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, brother, thanks for coming over, and we're gonna go ahead and shut this thing off.
Okay.